What's up everybody on YouTube, AJ Russ back to discuss another video, and today we're going to be recapping NFL Week 11. There was for sure a lot of storylines in this week, some unfortunate injuries as well, but some good games too nevertheless. So before I get into the video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. I post videos about sports, lifestyle, and pop culture. Love posting these NFL weekly recaps, chopping it up about football and things of that nature. So with that being said, let's get into Week 11. Alright guys, so of course I just mentioned injuries and things of that nature. This Thursday night football game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals was definitely injury riddled. Of course, you see the thumbnail that I have on the video. It includes Joe Burrow. In my opinion, Joe Burrow being out for the season with a hand injury really is tough for the Bengals, who were at least attempting to try to get some momentum. Of course, they had lost in week 10 against the Houston Texans, but they were optimistic about the matchup between the Ravens. But really in that game, the Ravens were dominating even when Joe Burrow was playing, and ultimately they were the better team. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens won the game 34-20, now have an 8-3 record, and now the Bengals are 5-5. And Jake Browning, I'm not gonna lie, for the Bengals, he did play pretty good in a backup role. He had some moments, but I just don't think that the Bengals are gonna ultimately be able to make a playoff push in the stacked AFC. They're on the outside looking in now, and it's just gonna be an uphill climb for sure for them. And with teams like the Texans that are playing good, that beat them in the previous week, I just think that it's gonna be hard for them to get into the playoff picture. But also another injury on the other side for the Baltimore Ravens, and Mark Andrews, he's out for the season as well. Just a bad break for sure. Honestly, Mark Andrews being Lamar Jackson's #1 receiving option, even despite having Zay Flowers, who's having an electric rookie year, and Odell Beckham, who's trying to get his footing right. Losing Mark Andrews for the season definitely hurts. One of the best tight ends in the league, and it's going to be tough for the Ravens, but fortunately they're 8-3. Lamar had some suspect moments in terms of him looking healthy because he was limping a little bit, but hopefully he'll be okay. But in this game, man, it just sucks that Joe Burrow's not going to be able to play anymore, but it makes the AFC definitely more interesting to say the least. Teams like the Chargers and now the Bengals potentially missing the playoffs, and we'll talk about the Chargers later. It's just really interesting, but the Ravens for sure think are the second best team in the AFC if you want to interchange them with the Dolphins, which we'll talk about them as well later. But the Ravens, I think they've been playing pretty good football, and they definitely dominated in that game against the Bengals. We'll go to the AFC North again, a Sunday matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. This was definitely a defensive battle, and the Browns were able to out-edge the Pittsburgh Steelers, winning by a field goal at the end, winning 13-10. You already knew this game, of course, with Deshaun Watson, also another injury being out for the season. Just a bad break for these quarterbacks this year. A lot of injuries, man, but they were able to get a good win. The Browns, in my eyes, have the best defense in the NFL this year, just so consistent. Myles Garrett, you for sure have to toss him into the MVP conversation. I know that basically that's been a quarterback award for forever, but still, man, the last defensive player to win MVP was Lawrence Taylor, so it's definitely possible for sure. He is that good, and he's playing great football. I think easily the defensive player of the year candidate. But yeah, the Browns, I mean, that was a really good win for them. The Steelers, of course, they have a great defense as well, but Kenny Pickett and the offense were very limited in terms of what they were able to do offensively. And shout out to the rookie Dory Thompson-Robinson. I mean, he was able to play solid football. He did have an interception, but ultimately they were able to win the game, and he was able to be a part of the reason why they were in position to kick that field goal at the end to win the game. So shout outs to the Browns, second in the AFC North now. I mean, that's huge, right behind the Ravens. And of course the Steelers, they still have a chance to make the playoffs as well. But yeah, I mean, this AFC North, man, it is definitely easily the best division in the NFL right now. Next game we have to talk about is a matchup between the Miami Dolphins and the Las Vegas Raiders. And this game was probably closer than a lot of people would have expected. Not necessarily if you looked at how the Las Vegas Raiders have been playing. Of course, with the head coach change, they've been playing inspired football, not having Josh McDaniels there anymore. They of course lost the game 13-20 to the Dolphins, but they played pretty good. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa, he had 325 passing yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception, but he did have an interception, so the Raiders are playing inspired defense for sure. And offensively, that's really why the Raiders lost. Aiden O'Connell had 3 interceptions in the game. Just really tough for them. Jalen Ramsey was able to get lit, and he had an interception as well, just joining in on the party. Shout out to him. Of course, he was out for the first, I think, 7 to 8 weeks of the season before coming back against the Chiefs. But yeah, I mean, the Raiders, they're still a solid team. Of course, a team that can win any night against a contender and just in general in the NFL, but I don't think we're really expecting them to make the playoffs, of course, with the stacked AFC, like I continue to say. The Miami Dolphins, now they're for sure supposed to be one of the contenders, and we'll see what happens in the playoffs and how they get there. They have a 7-3 record now. Of course, Tyreek Hill going crazy with Tua Tagovailoa. Tyreek Hill had 146 receiving yards for 10 receptions and 1 touchdown, so we know how electric and good Tyreek Hill is, how great he is, actually. Not good, but great. So that's a good win for the Dolphins, one that you would expect to win, maybe by more, but they still won, and that's what matters the most at the end of the day. The next game we had was a NFC North matchup between the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions were able to win the game 31-26. The Lions now have an 8-2 record. I believe it's their best 10 game start in over 50 plus, almost 60 years, I think, something like that. So definitely a long time. The Lions are playing really good football for sure. Props to them. And also for the Bears, they saw Justin Fields return after missing 4 games, and he played really good actually. He had 169 passing yards and a touchdown, but he also had 140 rushing yards. We know what type of athleticism that Justin Fields displays for sure, and honestly, he was playing solid football before he got injured, so really a good game for him, but of course not enough as they did lose to the Lions. And Jared Goff, he had a struggle struggling game. He did throw 3 interceptions, but they were able to get the W, so that's what matters most. David Montgomery had 76 rushing yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 77 receiving yards and a touchdown. And Montgomery also had a touchdown, as I should add. But yeah, the Lions, I mean, they're playing good football, easily, in my opinion, the favorites to win the division in the NFC North, and of course, be one of those teams that can contend in the NFC, like I said before. Of course, you have the Philadelphia Eagles in number 1, and with how the 49ers played as well in week 11, which we'll talk about in a few, and week 10, they're for sure up there. And I think you have a second tier, which includes the Dallas Cowboys and the Detroit Lions, so they're definitely on par to be really good and win a division. But for the Bears, man, just punt the season, like I said. And you have a lot of questions if you want to continue with Justin Fields, because you potentially have 2 top 3 to 5 picks in the 2024 draft. That'll be an interesting conversation in the offseason, but we'll see what ensues there. This next game, we really don't have too much to talk about it. The Jacksonville Jaguars dominated the Tennessee Titans, winning 34-14. Really, the Jaguars needed this win because they got tapped in week 10 against the San Francisco 49ers. So they were definitely on fraudulent alert, and I still think that they might be on fraud alert, but this is a good win. I mean, of course, they're supposed to win against the 3-6, then now 3-7 Titans. That's really good. Of course, there was rumors about Trevor Lawrence dealing with a little knee injury, so we get that, but to get dominated in the week before by the 49ers like that was definitely fraudulent. But he had a good game in this game, had 262 passing yards, completed 24 out of his 32 passing attempts for 2 touchdowns. Calvin Ridley had 7 receptions for 103 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Really just an overall dominant win for the Jaguars. I believe they're up like 28-0 at one point of the game, so that's not surprising. Will Levis, I'd say he had a solid game. I mean, he did complete 13 out of his 17 passing attempts for 158 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, but it was nothing like his first start, so there's a lot of conversation in Tennessee for sure. If you want to trade Derrick Henry, he only had 38 rushing yards for 10 carries, so not a lot on the running game really for the past couple of weeks. But yeah, but nothing really too much to talk about this game. Really, a lot is going to be measured in week 12 when the Jaguars play against the Texans. Of course, the Jaguars lost big against the Texans in week 3, so that's really going to be potentially bragging rights for the division in a sense, so that'll be a really entertaining and good game in Houston in week 12. Speaking of Houston, the Texans were able to win the game against the Arizona Cardinals, winning 21-16. They now have a 6-4 record. Being a Houstonian, but not a fan of the Texans, but definitely respecting and loving CJ Stroud's game, I really enjoy the success that they're having this season, of course, being coached by D'Amico Ryans. And this arguably was CJ Stroud's worst game. He did throw 3 interceptions, but he had 336 passing yards, completed 27 out of his 37 passing attempts, had 2 touchdowns as well, and they still persevered and won the game, so that's what matters most. Devin Singletary had his second 100-plus rushing yard game in a row, had 22 carries for 112 rushing yards and a touchdown. Tank Dell from my college, University of Houston, yes sir, had 8 receptions, 149 receiving yards and a touchdown. Texans played really good. It was a real gritty game that they won and pulled out at the end, winning 21-16. Kyler Murray, seeing him in the past 2 weeks, man, it really doesn't look like he's missed a beat. He had his first passing touchdown in the game against the Texans, completed 20 out of his 30 passing attempts for 214 passing yards and a touchdown. I mean, he moves so fast, bro, and he's really fun to watch in my opinion when he gets out the pocket. So glad that Kyler Murray is playing good after being out nearly a year with that ACL injury. For the Texans, they're trying to get in the playoffs for this season in 2023. They definitely have a great chance to. Like I mentioned a second ago, that game against the Jaguars in week 12 is going to be a huge matchup for sure, and definitely a fun watch.
Is anybody surprised about what happened? No. Nope.
Let's talk about an AFC team that honestly is slipping out of the playoff standings, and I believe we'll have a new coach next year. That's the Los Angeles Chargers. They lost against the Green Bay Packers, who have been very up and down and mostly down this season, but they were able to win against the Chargers, winning 23-20. Both teams are now 4-6. Really, this is a game that the Chargers are going to look back at and be like, man, we easily could have won this game. And maybe not easily, but definitely should have won the game. And it's one that's not good for them. They have 6 losses already. If they want to try to make a push in the AFC to make the playoffs, it is stacked. It's not easy. If you have a favorite team in the AFC, if they're not the Chiefs, Ravens, Dolphins, honestly, I'm praying for you because that's a lot of stress, really. But Justin Herbert, I mean, he did have a good game overall. Completed 21 out of his 36 passing attempts for 260 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. But really, we can talk about all the stats and things of that nature. Chargers, they have a lot of talent. They always have enough. And of course, Joey Bosa, he did get injured, so praying for him. And Keenan Allen, he had a really good game, 10 receptions, 116 receiving yards and a touchdown. But there's just always something with the Chargers. I mean, I just don't know what it is. It's just really frustrating because you know and recognize how good of a team they can be, but they just let a lot of people down in terms of expectations. And the Green Bay Packers, they have been playing, like I said, bad mostly of this season, but it was a good game from Jordan Love. He had 322 passing yards for 2 touchdowns, completing 27 out of his 40 passing attempts. I mean, a really good win for the Packers, but for the Chargers, I mean, I'm sorry if you're a Chargers fan, man. It has to be so frustrating because you recognize what type of talent this team has. And of course, it sucks that Mike Williams got injured earlier in the year, but man, it's just tough, man. Brandon Staley, I believe he for sure is on the hot seat. This game was a dominant performance from the Dallas Cowboys. They were able to get a win over the Carolina Panthers. One we really expected, honestly. The Panthers are now 1-9. I mean, they've had a tumultuous and terrible season, so no one's surprised that they got smacked in this game. The Dallas Cowboys now have a 7-3 record overall. Dak Prescott, he's been playing really good good football over the past month with some change. Of course, some has been on some bad teams, so like everyone knows that we're going to measure Dak by his performance in the playoffs, but it's also important for us not to take for granted how good he is. And I'm not saying he's great, but he's really good quarterback for sure. And the disrespect that he's received after having that one season in 2022 where he had a lot of interceptions, I believe 15, 17 if you include the game against the 49ers in the playoffs. But that was his one season where he had a lot of turnovers. Besides that, he's been really good relatively in protecting the football, not having a lot of turnovers. And he had 189 passing yards and 2 touchdowns in this game against the Panthers. No one really stood out individually in terms of the Cowboys offensively. Of course, defensively, Deron Bland had his 4th pick 6 of the season. I believe 6 interceptions this year. Really playing really good football defensively in the absence of Trayvon Diggs. The Cowboys found them another ball hawk in Bland, so that's really good for their defense. The next game for the Cowboys is against the Commanders on Thanksgiving, so that'll be interesting because the Commanders lost to the Giants, who the Cowboys smacked in week 10, but you can never measure previous games. Of course, you have to play on that game because every given game, but we all know for the Cowboys, I mean, you either love them or hate them, but we're going to measure them and see what they do in the playoffs. And of course, it was a good thing for them. They're going to finally honor former head coach Jimmy Johnson in the 90s in the Ring of Honor, what Jerry Jones said. So that's good for them, but that's besides the point. The Cowboys, that's a good win for them, and we'll see how they do going into the stretch of this season. Speaking of that Giants and Commanders game, we don't have to spend too much time on it. The Giants did win 31-19. Of course, both of these teams have way under 500 records. The Giants now being 3-8 and the Commanders being 4-7. But I will say the Giants' 2 wins out of the 3 have been over the Commanders. So they swept the Commanders on the season. That's pretty embarrassing, not gonna lie. And the biggest thing in this game that was a difference was Sam Howell throwing 3 interceptions. Of course, we knew that he was leading the league in passing yards, being a gunslinger for sure under that offense, headlined by Eric Bieniemy, who's offensive coordinator now there. But it doesn't mean nothing to me. They lost to the freaking Giants, and like I said, they had the Cowboys in week 12 on Thanksgiving, so that'll be a tough game. And the Giants, who were dominated the week before, had to bounce back performance ultimately. Tommy DeVito this game threw for 246 passing yards, completing 18 out of his 26 passing attempts for 3 touchdowns. So that's a good win for the Giants, and ultimately really a game that is between 2 teams that aren't really competing for anything, honestly, but someone had to win, you know, so hey. Also, honestly, I do think that Ron Rivera is on a hot seat in Washington, but that's a conversation for another day. I think there's going to be a lot of change in 2024 for the Commanders. This game included 2 teams in the NFC West, in the Los Angeles Rams and the Seattle Seahawks, and the Rams were able to narrowly win the game against the Seahawks, winning 17-16. Rams now have a 4-6 record, and the Seahawks now have a 6-4 record, and 2 of the Rams wins have come over the Seahawks, so that's really good for them in terms of that. In terms of the Seahawks, I for sure think that they can still contend for a wild card spot in the NFC, because I think that the 49ers are going to win that NFC West convincingly, and also I think the Seahawks have to play against the 49ers 2 times in the next few weeks, so that's going to be potentially 2 more losses for them, so that's going to be tough, but that's one that the Seahawks for sure wish they could have had. Of course, Geno Smith, he did get hurt in the game and missed 3 series, and he did come back, but Drew Lock threw an interception in the game, and I think that that really stalled a lot of things from their offense to get going. And Geno did have a good game. I mean, when he was playing, he had 233 passing yards and a touchdown, but it was to no avail. The Rams still won. Matthew Stafford had 190 passing yards, a touchdown, and an interception after being hurt a few weeks ago in the Dallas Cowboys game. Cooper Kupp missed this game, but Puka Nacua, who has been amazing throughout this whole season, had 70 receiving yards and a touchdown. So a good win for the Rams. I for sure think that the Seahawks wish they could have won this one, but they still have a chance to make the playoffs in the NFC for sure. This game was utter domination between the Buffalo Bills and New York Jets, and of course we saw in week 1 when the Jets beat the Bills in the overtime thriller with Aaron Rodgers getting hurt. I mean, that was a really gutsy win for the Jets, but the reality is that their offense has been utter crap. They haven't been able to get anything going, and no disrespect to Zach Wilson because he has played solid over the time this season, definitely compared to last year, but I mean, dog, 7 for 15, 81 passing yards, a touchdown, yay, and 1 interception. I mean, their offense is so limited, man. They put Tim Boyle in the game. I mean, what was that going to do? Change nothing. They lost the game 32-6 to Buffalo. And now in addition to that, also, Zach Wilson is now the 3rd string quarterback with Tim Boyle going to start against the Miami Dolphins in week 12 on Black Friday. So that's definitely something. And then not only Zach Wilson going from being benched, but being a 3rd string, that's crazy because Trevor Siemian, he's going to be the backup behind Tim Boyle. So it's just really frustrating if you're a Jets fan. It's been a lot of years being irrelevant, and this will probably be another one, even though you have a great defense. But just pray for Aaron Rodgers to stay healthy next year, because with him, anything is possible. A good game for Buffalo after firing Ken Dorsey, offensive coordinator, in the loss after losing to the Denver Broncos in week 10. Joe Brady now calling plays. So they had a good game, of course, against that Jets defense, who is really good, but I think that they've maybe slipped a little bit. Of course, having to carry your offense can be a lot, so that is tough for them. But the Bills, I mean, it's a real good win for them if they want to make the playoffs, because they're still in the hunt kind of, but it's a good win for the Bills for sure, trying to get back up in the playoff seed rankings for the AFC, trying to still contend with the Miami Dolphins to win the AFC East. Sunday Night Football was a game between the Denver Broncos and the Minnesota Vikings, which is actually a really good game. It came down to the end and down to the wire. and the Broncos were able to win at the end pretty much with a game-winning touchdown from Russell Wilson to Cortland Sutton to win the game 21-20. The Broncos now have the longest active win streak in the league with 4 games in a row. They are now 5-5, and now the Minnesota Vikings 5-game winning streak was snapped in the game. But it's a lot of respect in terms of how the Vikings have played for sure. Really, both of these teams in the past month and some change. Russell Wilson, he played a really good game, and a lot of people were hating on him last year, and he probably deserved it for sure because he had a really down year. But this year, I don't think a lot of people are giving him enough credit. He's playing really good football offensively. Of course, earlier in the season, the Broncos had some defensive woes, but now they're waking up to the party because their defense was really good in this game against the Vikings. Russell Wilson did throw for 359 passing yards and 1 touchdown. Of course, I mentioned Cortland Sutton, who had that game-winning touchdown, had 66 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. On the other end for the Vikings, Joshua Dobbs, he had 221 passing yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He was getting rushed a lot, so he had to get out of the pocket. Like I said, that Denver defense was playing really good. So it was a really good win for Denver, and they're trying to keep their playoff hopes alive too, for sure. They're trying to get into the mix. Of course, things started off really suspect in Denver earlier in the year. Same with Minnesota, but especially for Denver. And now they're looking really good, and both of these teams really in the NFC for the Vikings and in the AFC for the Broncos. Both have legit shots to sneak in as a wild card in both of their respective conferences. The last game that we had for NFL Week 11 was a Super Bowl rematch between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. And unlike the Super Bowl, the Philadelphia Eagles were able to win the game 21-17. And the Chiefs, they led for most of the game. And I can talk about all these stats and things of that nature, but let's just talk about it. We all know Marquez Valdez-Scantling dropping that wide open touchdown. I mean, it's been a huge glaring issue for the Chiefs, man. This whole season, not having another threat beside Travis Kelce, it's gonna come back to bite them, I feel like, in the postseason. Eventually, not only did they lose this game, but now they lost the first seed in the AFC right now. Of course, now Baltimore has that. And we'll see how long that lasts if Baltimore is able to run away with the first seed in the AFC, but we've never seen the Chiefs not have the first seed in the Patrick Mahomes era, so that would be interesting to ever see Patrick Mahomes have to go on the road for a playoff game. I mean, that's unflappable, unthinkable. We haven't seen that before, but definitely possible. But talking about the game, both quarterbacks in this game, Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, had 1 interception. Jalen Hurts really didn't have the best passing game, had 150 passing yards and an interception, but he did have 2 rushing touchdowns, of course, so that was good for Jalen Hurts. DeAndre Swift had a rushing touchdown, had a few explosive running plays. Devontae Smith had 99 receiving yards. But in this game, I feel like the Eagles proved that they can beat the Chiefs, of course. I mean, honestly, you can make the comment that Marquez Valdez-Scantling, if he made the catch, obviously they would have won the game. I mean, that's pretty apparent, but he didn't make the catch, and that ultimately cost him. So the inability of the Chiefs wide receivers to make any plays, to continue to drop the football, that's going to come back to bite him, in my opinion. And that's a bad break, but good thing it's only week 11. It's not the playoffs right now. Good thing it wasn't a playoff game. Good thing that there's still time in the season. But even in the AFC West, for them, the Chiefs need to continue to dominate. I don't think that losing to the Broncos in that one game was really good for them. The Broncos are playing good football, but yeah, they'll be okay, man. And the Eagles, they continue to be the best team in NFC, and they definitely are positioning themselves to be the first seed for 2 years in a row. All right, guys, so if there's anything that we learned from NFL Week 11, it's that we're starting to get a real clear picture of the playoff picture. And not only that, we're going to see how tough and how down to the wire the AFC playoff picture is going to be as well. In the NFC, you relatively have a frame of idea of who's going to make the playoffs. Of course, the Eagles, the 49ers, the Lions, Cowboys, most likely the Seahawks and things of that nature. But in the AFC, like I said, besides the Ravens now, who are the first seed, the Chiefs, and the Dolphins, the rest is up for grabs for sure. Like I said about the AFC South earlier, it's going to be interesting to see who wins that Week 12 game between the Jaguars and the Texans. It's going to really determine a lot. And the Buffalo Bills, they certainly still have opportunity to make the playoffs. We'll see what happens there. They had a good win against the Jets, so definitely a lot to take away from Week 11. And let me know in the comments down below how your favorite team is doing, some of your takeaways from NFL Week 11, and what you predict going into the next chunk of the season. Anyways, though, guys, I appreciate you guys watching always. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. I post videos about sports, lifestyle, and pop culture. Follow me on Instagram at SwaggyRuss, and also on TikTok at SwaggyRuss02 for cooking videos, shorts, and things of that nature. More content, more videos are on the way. Stay tuned for these recaps. Hoping y'all have a blessed and amazing Thanksgiving this upcoming Thursday. Of course, we'll have coverage on Week 12 next week, so stay tuned for that. Make sure y'all eat good. Don't eat too much. Make sure y'all burn some of those Thanksgiving calories off. But nah, for real, hope you have a blessed one. Appreciate the support and love always recently and on all of the videos, of course, but I really appreciate y'all guys and all the positive comments. So y'all have a good one, be blessed, and thank you.